Today we'll be analyzing sonnet number 73 of Shakespeare, which is "That time of year mayst in me behold." Before going into the sonnet itself, we'll be discussing the sonnet sequence this particular sonnet falls under. We can group it together with the sonnets in between 71 to 74. The grouping is dependent on the poet's thematic contemplation of human relationships, which is guided by where the poet explores the fleeting nature of life, the inevitability of death, its implications for human relationships, particularly how it affects the bond between the poet and the fair youth. Now, these sonnets do delve into the poet's contemplation of death, and that contemplation of death is symbolized through certain imagery that the poet uses in these sonnets, where the predominant theme is the passage of time, how nature itself reflects this passage of time, and how the poet as well as the readers of the sonnet could be aware of life's impermanence and what we can do about this impermanence, how it impacts the human relationship, whether the emotional impact, this continuous fear about the reality of the ephemerality of life's existence, whether we can overcome this ephemerality through the usage of poetry as an artistic medium to immortalize the love that they have. Now, each sonnet in this particular sequence within 71 to 74, where the poet is grappling with his own fears, desires, insecurities about death and what remains after death, how his legacy continues. Sonnet number 73 contains the themes which are common throughout the entire body of Shakespearean sonnet. Number one, the ravages of time, the continuous questioning of life's mortality, man's own mortality, the usage of nature imagery like the wintry boughs shaking against the cold, giving us a feeling or highlighting the feeling of youth which has already gone by. It is not even autumn anymore, but winter has approached and the trees have been left bereft of their leaves. Now, twilight's dying ember, even the fire of life, the spirit of life has absolutely gone by, and we are left with the twilight's dying ember. If you look at the kind of progression that sonnet number 71 to sonnet number 74 marks, sonnet number 71 will be a sonnet where the poet is urging the fair youth not to mourn him excessively after death, to cherish their love in a way. Sonnet number 72 will proceed towards the poet's own fear, the poet's own sense of unworthiness, insecurity, that his remaining memory might taint the purity of the youth after he passes away. So, what remains after his death? How does the other person continue to live? And this particular sonnet is significant in the way it completely questions the emotional, philosophical understandings of self worth in the face of life's mortality. The one sonnet that we are dealing with over here, sonnet number 73, which starts with a powerful imagery of late autumn, then we proceed towards winter, where dawn has now gone by, the morning has gone by, and we are left with twilight approaching darkness. Even the fire is extinguished, and we are left with the dying embers. So, all of the imagery that the poet uses in this sonnet number 73 are meditations on the transient nature of life. And finally, in the sonnet 74, the poet is contemplating the enduring power of how the poet's verse, the sonnet form itself, his writings themselves can immortalize this love. You can think of sonnet number 74 being more hopeful in tone than the other three sonnets that we talked about, in the sense that he tries to have the faith that this will remain. His writings, that he is where he is proclaiming his love for the fair youth, shall remain even after he does not remain in his physical body, but rather a transcendence above the materiality, physicality of existence itself. That is what we are left with in the final sequence of this particular sonnets. Now, coming to the sonnet itself. If you notice the sonnet, that time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, where ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. The first four lines, the first quatrain of the sonnet, is painting an image of autumn, a late autumn where the leaves of the trees have already yellowed, and barely do they hang on the trees. Very few hang. The rest have already fallen down. The tree has been left bare, meaning life has already gone by. It is the fleetingness of life, that is the image that he is trying to capture. And even the choirs are bare and ruined because the sweet birds who used to sing have again flown away because of the approaching winter. And just like these hollowed out bare branches are shaking against the cold, similarly, the poet's life is also something that is left barren and bereft and almost ruined. He has reached almost the end of his life. In the next four quatrains, you can see, in me thou seest the twilight of such day. Again, the imagery will be one where the day has passed by. We have reached towards the end of the day. It's almost approaching evening, and soon darkness will engulf all of us. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away. Look at the imagery that is being used here. Just like black night approaches and takes away the kind of light, brightness that the morning daylight provides. So, also, you can think of it in terms of slow approaching sleep, which is taking away life from the soul. It's almost like death's second self. Again, another metaphor which is actually referring to sleep itself. Death's second self will be sleep, that is sealing up all in rest. The imagery that it evokes is one where the dead body is shut up in the coffin and laid to rest. It's almost like with the impending darkness engulfing all of us, we are letting ourselves sleep away and we are letting go of life itself. The following four lines which make up the last quatrain, where we can see his last imagery that he is exploring. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the death-bed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. The last imagery is the fire imagery, where even the burning fire is now slowly fading away. It is lying on the ashes of his youth. The youth has gone by, he has reached the last stage of life, and there is no burning fire anymore. There is no ember of hope, so to say. He is well aware that life is already escaping by. There is nothing for the fire to keep on burning for anymore. And in the last ending couplet, he provides us with the resounding theme, this thou perceivest. Once you perceive this thing, once you understand this thing, is dedicating, is talking to his lover, whom we consider to be the fair youth, of course. Once you perceive this thing, thy love more strong, makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave here long. You have to understand that it is this thought that we are running out of time, that life is escaping by. It shouldn't make you sad, but what it should help you understand is that now is the moment to love even more. We should preserve this moment that we have and to love that well, which thou must leave here long, so that we can carry this memory forward through the sonnets that I am writing, and to live in this very present, not think about the impending doom that awaits us all. That will be the resounding statement of sonnet number 73. To go into a detailed explanation of the first four lines, the first quatrain, that time of year thou mayst in me behold. This first line is automatically referring you to autumn. Which time of the year? When yellow leaves or none or few do hang. When do the trees have yellow leaves? When it is autumn, of course, the late autumn, few do hang. That automatically implies it's late autumn, and it is a symbol that is being used to refer to the poet's own life, where he has reached the late autumn of his life, when the leaves have already fallen from the trees, the weather has grown cold, and the birds have also left the branches. There are no sweet birds to sing the songs anymore. They have left their branches because the weather has grown cold, just like the poet's life itself has reached towards the end. It's winter now. It's not the brightness, the vigor of spring, summer, or even the gentleness of autumn anymore. We are talking about absolutely cold, barren landscape here. That time of year mayst in me behold, you might think back your readings of Macbeth, where Macbeth in Act 5, Scene 3 will say, my way of life is fallen into the sere, the yellow leaf. It's the same imagery that is getting repeated, one where one has reached, the person speaking has reached the end of his life. The second quatrain The four lines that follow after that is, in me thou seest the twilight of such day, as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away death's second self that seals up all in rest. Now he is comparing his age to late twilight, when the sunset has already fading away in the western horizon, where the remaining light is slowly extinguished by darkness, and as darkness comes in, we must be laid to rest, we must be laid to sleep. And that sleep, the word sleep itself is hidden away in the usage of the metaphor death's second self, where we are not using the word sleep itself. And the metaphor and imagery that these four lines evoke is that a coffin is, it's almost like a coffin carrying a dead body to eternal rest. It's almost like the poet is waiting for death, and death is close to the poet. You feel it in these four lines that in this second quatrain itself, the poet is continuously thinking about death. And he has this imagery of death that Shakespeare uses is not just limited to his sonnets, but if you recollect your reading of Hamlet, if you recollect your reading of Macbeth, even in those tragedies, death is always being referred in terms of sleep, something which is creeping in slowly, something which is the impending arrival of something that is continuously making the person fearful and skeptical. The third quatrain, in me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie. Now, these two lines, the speaker compares himself to the glowing fire, the remnants of the fire that is the ashes of his youth, a fire that is fading away, a fire that is not really burning anymore. And this particular metaphor used in these first two lines illustrates how fire, which was once fueled by logs, fire is usually fueled by logs. In this case, it will be referring to life's own spirit, which is now fading away, now rests on the ashes of that very fire, which is not helping it to burn anymore, but rather it's being extinguished by that very ash which once aided in the glowing of such fire. The fire which was nourished by its own burn, its own ashes, will be now extinguished. Life will slowly die away as the ashes, uh, the fire which was burning on its own, now life is towards its end and it'll sink away into the ashes. It won't really burn anymore. The two last lines, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, the life's deathbed itself. On one hand, it is the fire's deathbed, of course, where the ashes are extinguishing it, but also one's life, which was fueled by his love for the youth, is now getting consumed by it. The fear of what remains after death is consuming him. It's getting consumed with that which it was once nourished by. In the ending couplet, the ending couplet mean the last two lines which rhyme, where the last words rhyme with each other. These thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave here long. Now the poet is telling the youth that he must understand the frailty of life itself. This understanding could deepen the strength of the youth's love for life and the youth's love for the poet as well, because they don't have long to live. They have that moment in itself, and a life that the fair youth will inevitably depart from in the near future. That makes it even more necessary to cherish the moments they have together now, because it won't be everlasting. So the poet says, which makes thy love more strong to love that well, which thou must leave here long. They don't have eternity to spend together. So, something which is going to leave after a moment of time should be cherished even more strongly in the present moment. Let us go back to our recollection of the poem itself, of the sonnet itself, that is sonnet number 73. What are the literary devices that Shakespeare is using? One of the most significant literary devices will be the usage of alliteration in the phrase death's second self that seals up all in rest. Think about how the S sound is continuously getting repeated. And with the repetition of the same S sound, that is what is adding to the lyricism, that is what is adding to the rhyming skill that Shakespeare uses in his lyrical sonnet. That is what adds to the smooth flow of the sonnet itself. Secondly, something we have talked about extensively, the usage of imagery itself. How Shakespeare is using the imagery. Now, the visual imagery will be one where Shakespeare is using the very, very colorful. He is trying to use color to depict certain things. Think about the way he uses yellow leaves, then the sunset fading into the west, then the black night, then the image of the black night, then the image of the twilight, then the image of the glowing fire, which is now extinguishing. So if you think of it in the terms of a painter, you can think of it as yellow and orange slowly fading away into purple and then darkness. Now, this is the visual imagery that we are talking about, where the usage of colors itself in the poem, the kind of words that evoke our sense of color, is now being used to make us think about the ephemerality of life, something dark that is consuming the poet's mind, fear that is consuming the poet's mind. That is how apt imagery is getting used by Shakespeare in this particular sonnet. The symbolism will be definitely the act of using certain ideas. For example, the color of the leaves fading, the usage of autumn will automatically mean that the poet has reached the end, towards the end of his life. The usage of black night, the understanding of second death, that is death's second self, will be in reference to the sleep, and ultimately sleep giving way to something which is more permanent, more eternal, that is death itself. The fading away of the sun, the fading away of the glowing fire, all of this stand for something ending or death itself. So, consonance is the one where there is a repetition of the same consonant sound in the line, such as the B sound, which is being used in the line, which by and by black night doth take away. Now think about this repetition of the B sound that you are seeing. That is how the usage of consonants functions in this particular sonnet. Of course, there's the usage of personification, metaphor, which is getting used predominantly throughout, not just in this sonnet but in the rest of the sonnets from Shakespeare as well. Metonymy, of course. Now, what is personification? Personification is the literary device where we attribute human characteristics to inanimate objects. Shakespeare had used personification in his other sonnets as well, and in this particular one, in the eighth line, when we are talking about death's second self, aren't we attributing an inanimate thing like death with the sense of self, that is, treating it as if it is a human being, as if it is a living thing? And in death's second self, it is sealing up all in rest. It is taking away the functionality, the activeness of human life. That is how we are personifying or attributing certain characteristics which we usually link with living things to something which is inanimate. Then comes metaphor. Shakespeare's usage of metaphor in this particular sonnet is numerous. Number one, when yellow leaves on none or few do hang, we are referring to autumn. The twilight of such day, again in reference to something or light or life that is fading away. Black night, the slow approaching of something unknown, that is death. Glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie. Something which is burning away, something which is on its way to get extinguished, where there won't be life anymore. Now, these metaphors continuously evoke the sense of the last stage of life and death. The phrases represent the presentness where there were the present state of things where the leaves have already turned yellow, which makes us refer to the past when there was life, when life itself was getting fueled by the love that the poet had for this fair youth, and the future time when the poet won't be there anymore. That is the continuous fear that is guiding the poet. That is the continuous insecurity behind this four sonnet sequence. Lastly, we have metonymy, which is a figure of speech that replaces the nature of things with something else with which it is closely associated. Now, here if you look at this particular phrase where we talked about the birds not being there to sing anymore, bare ruined choirs remind one of a desolate a charge ground where there are no human beings left, where there are no one to even uh, pray at or sing any song. So, even when a charge ground is left bereft, that automatically means that life has already escaped by. There is no life to things anymore. To start again, from the structure and form, if you remember your Shakespearean sonnets sequence, we have the three quatrains in this particular sonnet as well, where each line alternatively rhymes with the other, ending in a couplet where the end word of the couplet rhymes with each other. And of course, the metrical usage is that of iambic pentameter. If you think about the imagery, usage of symbolism, and the usage of metaphor, It is the usage of late autumn, impending winter imagery, which is talking about the aging process. The twilight and the night, we are getting to see death approaching at a petty pace, and then the dying embers, the loss of vitality of life. So, thematically speaking, you can categorize it into the themes of aging, mortality, the passage of time, the impact of all of these things that affects the poet's love for the fair youth. The tone is, of course, something which is very somber and contemplative. It is a sonnet written in much earnestness in the way it addresses the beloved. The key idea that we are taking away from the sonnet is the awareness of life's impending doom, the awareness of life's mortality, ephemerality, and therefore trying to live with what the present moment holds, trying to live with what we have in the present. Because the poet himself is continuously scared of what happens in the future where life has already slipped by. And in the subsequent sonnets, we will be talking about how the poet tries to grapple with his insecurities by thinking that art itself is precious enough in upholding immortality, in holding out that his love for the fair youth was true in its state, but for now the poet is scared about what the future holds. Let us go through a few questions so that you can think back on the poem. So, in the first quatrain of Shakespeare's Sonnet 73, what does the aging speaker compare himself to metaphorically? It will be late autumn, of course. Remember the usage of the tree imagery, how the tree is left barren. In the second quatrain of Sonnet 73, Shakespeare is using the metaphor of twilight where light is fading away, death slowly approaching through sleep itself. In the third quatrain, we have the imagery of the fire burning out where life has lost its vitality. From the discussion of these images itself, you can think about writing down what the other images might be that Shakespeare is using in the sonnet. What this imagery, this usage of imagery means for the poet. Why this preoccupation with death in the first place? You can refer to few of these books for your analysis of Shakespearean sonnet, and if you want to refer to the other sonnets that we mentioned in the lecture, that will be all. Thank you.